Hey guys, it's Devonna, and I am back with part 6 of the 8-part serial killings and mass murders Iceberg. Let's get into it. The 1984 Rock Island Railroad wreck. At 7:30 p.m. on August 9, 1984, Locomotive 213 departed the station in Fairway, Nebraska, with 2 passenger cars due to reach Lincoln, Nebraska 2 hours later. At about 9:20 p.m., minutes away from its destination, the train reached a 400-foot-long trestle, which was located southwest of town and carried trains 40 feet above the waters of Salt Creek. Today, the trestle passes above the Jamaican North Trail at Wilderness Park. The rails began to spread apart as the engine crossed the trestle, and as the passenger cars began to cross, the weight became too much for the structure, and the entire train crashed into the creek below. Upon impact, the engine burst, spilling hot coals on both the train and the wooden trestle, and soon flames covered both. According to the newspaper article at the time, it was an awful sight. 3 men escaped the wreckage quickly. Colonel C.J. Bills organized an effort to rescue other passengers with the help of J. McDowell and crewman Harry Foote. The 3 determined that the passengers in the first car and engine were beyond help, so they focused on the rear car instead. And from that car, they rescued 15 passengers. As Bills and McDowell ran to find help, Foote twice climbed into the wreckage to pull out 2 fellow crewmen, despite having suffered a broken leg himself. The first building Bills and McDowell could see was a state penitentiary, 2 miles away, from which they called the fire and police departments and the railroad. A train reached the scene about 40 minutes after the incident and carried the survivors to Lincoln. Due to the equipment available at the time and the conditions and location of the wreck, no fire wagons could reach the site. It was reported that the only thing to do was just let the whole pile burn. Of the 33 passengers aboard when leaving Fairbury, Nebraska, 11 of them were killed in the crash. The Milwaukee Police Department bombing. November 24, 1917, a 20-pound bomb was discovered in a passageway between the Italian church located at 355 North Van Buren Street and the neighboring mission house by the 10-year-old daughter of the church cleaning lady on Saturday morning. In the evening, a young man named Sam Mazzone, a member of the church, and an unnamed man brought the device to the police station. Station keeper Henry Deckard took the device from the young men and brought it to the lieutenant's office and then into the assembly. A number of detectives who had just answered to roll call were in the room. Several of them were examining the infernal device when its hell and fury was unleashed. Of the 10 officers who were in the police station assembly room at the time of the explosion, 8 of them were killed and 2 of them were injured. The Lake Worth Church Fire. This occurred in 1999 in Lake Worth, Texas, United States. On February 15th of 99, firefighters in Lake Worth, Texas, and surrounding towns were alerted to a fire in a church on Roberts Cutoff Road in the area of Cowden Street just before 11 a.m. The roof of the church would eventually collapse, trapping 5 firefighters inside, 3 of which would die before they could be rescued. 4 firefighters were also on the roof performing ventilation operations when it collapsed below them, and I could not find any other information on what their condition was. The mainline murders. On the morning of June 25, 1979, a Monday, a call was received by police dispatchers in the area of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The caller, a male that decided to remain anonymous, alerted police to a vehicle in a motel parking lot in the Swatara Township, which was roughly halfway between Harrisburg and Hershey. According to this caller, the woman, who he found in the back of a vehicle in the trunk, was sick. But when police arrived at the motel parking lot just after 5:30 in the morning, they discovered that she wasn't sick at all. In fact, she wasn't even alive. Rather, she had been dead for close to 24 hours, and her nude body, which has been haphazardly thrown into the trunk of this abandoned Plymouth, showed signs of abuse preceding her death. Over the next several hours, police would set out to identify this woman, eventually discovering that she was a mother that had gone missing earlier that same weekend. Surprisingly, though, she had gone missing with her 2 children, both of whom were missing from the crime scene entirely and seemed to have vanished into thin air. The Monster of the Mangones is a name given to an unidentified Colombian serial killer who between the years of 1960 and 1970 murdered between 30 to 38 children and adolescents in Cali. He's believed to be a native of the city, and he would kidnap and later kill most of his victims in various remote vacant lots. At the time, it was the most notorious criminal case in the country's history. For some, the monster was simply a myth or a legend, while others believed that he actually existed, later earning comparison with Louis Garavito. His modus operandi consisted of inserting needles into the heart and thorax, assaults, rapes, and torture. It is believed that he used syringes to draw blood from his victims, and possible sufferer of clinical vampirism. The Cass Ripper, or otherwise known as the Bigfoot Killer, is a name given to an unidentified American serial killer who raped and murdered 7 girls and women in Detroit, Michigan, United States, between February and October of 1975. All of the victims were engaged in prostitution and on the poverty side of life, with their killings taking place in the Cass Corridor neighborhood. The perpetrator chose young girls aged 16 to 22 who prostituted themselves on the streets as victims. In early 1975, he committed at least 4 rapes, with his victims going to the police and describing his appearance, from which a facial composite was created. After this information was revealed to the public, at the end of 1975, a number of NGO activists and several hundred residents of the Cass Corridor organized a rally in front of the police station, accusing the authorities of negligence due to victim social status. They appealed to the city's administrative bodies, demanding an investigation of subsequent punishment of officials because they refused to disclose information about the ongoing killings and were unable to take proper precautions. To back their claims, the protesters showed a police leaflet describing the killer's appearance, which included a telephone number for communication, but was unavailable at night. Representatives of law enforcement denied these allegations, claiming that enough was being done. Diana Lambrera allegedly suffocated 6 of her own children in Fort Worth, Texas. She would consistently rush each child, already dead at this point, to the hospital, saying that they had stopped breathing, and then blame medical staff for not resuscitating the child. The case prompted a nationwide concern for the problem of crib death, but hospital officials eventually became suspicious of Diana. The Pharmacy Maniac. On August 10, 2011, the offender walked into a classic pharmacy at 5:30 p.m. Upon entering, he shot Igor Ustinov, 30 years old. Visitors of the pharmacy ran into another room and huddled in a corner. Without stealing anything, the perpetrator then went outside to reload his gun, and after it was reloaded, he once again entered the pharmacy. Walking past the wounded man, the attacker asked, "Where is he?" The offender then walked back to Ustinov and shot him in the head several times. According to witnesses, the perpetrator then said, "It's your fault," or "It's all your fault, white coats." Satisfied that the victim was dead, he put his gun into his cell phone bag and then left. The Flat Tire Murders is a series of unsolved murders in Broward and Miami-Dade counties, Florida, United States. They occurred between February of 1975 and January of 1976. The name originated from the investigators' belief that when the offender committed 2 of the murders, he had deflated the tires of the victims' cars. The list of suspected victims ultimately included 12 girls and women whose bodies were discovered in or near South Florida canals. Some forensic experts have questioned whether a single offender was responsible for all of these murders, while others have proclaimed that the murderer might have killed more than 30 women in multiple different states. The 2004 Lubbock family murders. In spring of 2004, Tammy Cooper was a 45-year-old single mother to her 3 children, 11-year-old daughter and 9-year-old twin boys. She wanted a fresh start, so she moved from Dallas, Texas to Lubbock, Texas. Well, on October 25, 2004, a friend arrived to pick up her 3 children for school. Well, there was no answer at the door. The friend entered the apartment to find a horrifying scene. The family of 4 had all been stabbed, slashed, and beaten to death. There were signs that Tammy had fought to protect her children, and the kids had also tried to fight back and escape the attack. Police started their investigation into the brutal crime and came upon a curious clue. At 10:15 the previous evening, Tammy had been speaking on the phone with a friend. During the phone call, the friend heard the door to the apartment door when one of the children let in a visitor. Following this, the friend heard a deep man's voice tell Tammy to hang up the phone, because she and the man needed to talk. Tammy asked the man, "How did you find me?" Tammy's friend inquired who her visitor was. Tammy responded, "You don't know him. He isn't from here. His name is Butch." While she conveyed this information, Tammy sounded calm and provided no indication to her friend that she was scared or that anything was wrong. After this, she ended the phone call. About 15 minutes later, another friend called Tammy, and that call went straight to voicemail. The Ann Arbor Hospital murders. These were murders of 10 patients by unauthorized administration in their IVs of different types of drugs in Ann Arbor, Michigan Hospital in 1975. After a vast FBI investigation into the deaths, the nurses Filipina Narcio and Leonora Perez were charged with murder but convicted on only the charges of poisoning and conspiracy. Public opinion was against prosecution of the nurses on the basis that they could have had only the most trivial of possible motives for conspiring to commit such extremely serious crimes, and the case was dropped after a retrial had been ordered. Well, anyway, guys, that wraps up part 6 of this Iceberg. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps me keep my channel going. I'll see you next time. Good night.